Tom? Great to see you. How you been?
I'm good. It's always nice to connect with another Philly guy. The Phillies clinched, so, life is good. I watched them get shellacked by the Cubs on Tuesday night. So, it's Philly. Normal stuff.
Yeah, I am a Mets fan, even though I did live in Philadelphia.
Really?
For a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This I didn't know. Thanks for having me. Peace. This is news to me. Oh,
yes,
my God.
Yes. I lived in Philadelphia, went to Temple, lived there 3 years after graduating, and then made myself back home to New York City. But
I was going to wish you luck against Army tonight, but now I don't care. I just
Trust me, you could wish Temple luck. I don't know if that's going to help these days, even though they got a win last weekend. Let me start you off with Penn State. So I don't usually walk in when James Franklin is a coach of a team being optimistic about a squad. But with this new format, a 12-team college football playoff, I think it's designed for Penn State to get in. I thought going into the year, Penn State could be the third best team in the Big Ten. So more optimistic than most years in the past. They beat the snot out of West Virginia. Impressive win. I'm like, see, this is the Penn State team that I thought they can be. But then they followed up with an performance against Bowling Green. I know they had an off week and then they blew out Kent State. What is Penn State through the first 3 weeks of their season, in your opinion?
Balance offensively. Now, it has been a little Jekyll and Hyde, weeks 1 and 2. Completely agree with you. The road game against West Virginia, even Pat McAfee was saying, man, these guys are going to win the national championship. I didn't feel that way. I felt like it was an impressive opening win against the Big 12 team that had a good end of 2023, but it still remains to be seen what West Virginia is going to be. Bowling Green was odd in that I think we've all seen enough tape on Bowling Green now that they could plausibly win the MAC and could even be a G5 team, something like that could really make some noise. And Connor Bazelak and that receiving core is quite good and gave Penn State some trouble. You hope that during the bye week that some of the little things would get cleaned up in terms of pass protection and penalties. The penalties, unfortunately, continued against Kent State, but unfortunately, Kent State is maybe the worst team in FBS, no disrespect. So we're going to find out this weekend, honestly. Against Illinois, you're going to find out whether or not that explosive offense under offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki is going to be able to hold up against legitimate Big Ten competition. And the thing I've been encouraged about, it's what I came back to there, is the balanced offense. Every game this year, both the pass and the run have had over 200 yards. So if Illinois chooses to take away one, does the other flourish? That's what I'm looking for this weekend.
I did think the Illinois and Nebraska game was going to be closer than what Vegas thought last week. It was an 8.5-point spread in favor of the Cornhuskers. This week, though, I think it started out at 17.5, and it's already up to nearly 20 points at 19.5. What type of game do you kind of expect this to play out? Illinois coming off a big win. People liking Bielema. They're liking their quarterback Altmaier as well. But now you're going into Happy Valley. How do you see this game playing on out?
Here's the thing. I went to the game that went 9 overtimes. I don't believe anything in terms of what the spread could be, the over. I don't care what any of it is. Brett Bielema likes to play old school football, run the ball well, and play good run defense. And this team so far has proved that they can do that. They held Nebraska to under 3 yards per carry, and they caused a lot of penalties for Nebraska as well. They made it be Dylan Raiola versus the world, and he's a freshman. You can understand those things being a limitation for Matt Rule and company. Yeah, I think one, if weather is a factor this weekend, you're going to see the run game be dominant for both teams. Illinois has a 250-pound running back in Caden Fegan, so I think that's something they can lean on. And Luke Altmaier looks very different than the guy who threw 4 interceptions last year against Penn State. He threw 4 touchdowns last week and led the team to an overtime victory on the road in Lincoln. So I think Altmaier, one, has weapons that he can utilize in Franklin and Bryant at wide receiver. He seems a little bit more poised. He seems a little bit more confident. However, if Penn State's front seven, which has looked the part so far this year, if they can make him uncomfortable, maybe put the game on him and take away the run, I think that's going to be the best bet for Tom Allen and the defense. And then offensively, Kotelnicki, I understand all the explosivity and the plays that we see from Drew Allar, and there's a lot of hype about what number 15 can do, but this is a bread and butter, run the football type of offense. So if Penn State can stick to that pedigree, that identity, that's the thing, man. For the first time in years, Penn State has an offensive identity. If they can stick to that, they'll win.
How do you think we're talking about Drew Allar at the end of the season, Tom Hannifan?
I know there's a lot of people that think he could be a top 10 pick, a top 5 pick, maybe even the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft. I sincerely hope that Drew Allar returns to Penn State for 2025. Selfish reasons, yes. I think Penn State fans were extremely hard on him for his first year as a starter last year. I think Penn State fans expected Sean Clifford's out. We're going to see a huge upgrade. He's a 5-star. He's going to be the second coming. Shocking that didn't happen for a kid who was 18, 19 years old. And now all these little elements that were issues in his game last year, he's started to put together. He has changed his body to the point that he is a credible running threat. You're not going to line him up like he's Lamar Jackson, but he's definitely going to be able to get you first downs, and he's been productive in terms of scoring with his legs. He's making good decisions, just like he did last year, protected the football, and now he's able to show off his arm strength. So I think Allar, there's going to be a lot of people at the end of the year thinking, oh, man, this guy can go out. Or there's going to be people saying, he's good, but it's the running game, it's the defense, something like that. I think one more year at Penn State, and we will absolutely be talking about him as the number 1 overall pick in 2026.
I'm going to tell you, man, coming up in the future years, this draft class, I don't know if there's a generational talent, but moving forward after that, Raiola looks the part. You got Arch Manning as well, Nico Iamaleava right now at Tennessee. There's some young quarterbacks in college football right now, and it's good for us that we still have to see them play another few more years.
Yeah, I mean, and Evan Simon at Temple had 5 touchdowns last week. I mean, come on.
Man, you're just trying to kick me when I'm down, Tom Hannifan.
One of my closest buddies from my days at WWE is a Temple guy, so I just had to.
Yeah, no worries. Let me ask you about Franklin. I think Penn State's going to make the playoffs this year. If they don't make the playoffs, he should be fired. Do you share that same sentiment?
I don't think he will be fired. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
His buyout is somewhere in the neighborhood of $32 million. Penn State as a community does not comprehend the ability to spend that much money for somebody who isn't there. That just hasn't happened in Penn State football. You went from Joe Paterno to Bill O'Brien to James Franklin very quickly. So the thought of the board of directors and the Penn State athletic department coming together to be said, yep, we're going to eat that amount of money, I don't see it happening. However, I think there will be outrage amongst Penn State fans if they don't make the 12-team college football playoff. I think that's absolutely justified. Will you see him fired if they don't make it? I highly doubt it. Should he be? After 10 seasons and 11 total years, I struggle with the word should. That's the thing. I'm like, I don't know. You have to ask yourself, who else is out there that you're going to get that is going to produce at a higher level for this program?
Tom Hannifan here with us. All right, let's go around some of the other Big Ten schools. Ryan Day, Ohio State, it's championship or bust for them. He gives me like fake tough guy energy from time to time. They haven't been tested yet. Their fans were celebrating Michigan losing to Texas, and Ohio State hasn't been able to beat Michigan in 3 years. Are you buying the buzz that this is the year for Ryan Day? Forget just beating Michigan, they should, but that he's going to finally go bring that school a national championship.
I was going to say, considering the way that Michigan has struggled, they better beat Michigan this year. Then it's red alert for Ohio State, no pun intended there. Here's the thing, I was just saying this about Franklin, is that, who would you get to replace Franklin?
Yeah.
Well, that question's very easily answered in Columbus because he's the offensive coordinator. I've seen that story out there before, is that did Ohio State hire Chip Kelly as an insurance policy if Ryan Day doesn't come through with a national championship, if they don't come through all the way this year? And also, one of the biggest games this weekend, hopefully it's able to happen due to the weather, and I hope people down in the Southeast are being as safe as humanly possible, but Alabama versus Georgia doesn't have the same feel. When you look at the two teams, the way they performed, it doesn't feel like 2 versus 4, but it is still a battle of juggernauts within the top 5. If there is any cause for concern with Georgia and Alabama coming out of this weekend, some glaring weaknesses, there is a clear path for Ohio State, and I agree with you. They haven't played anybody of really any substance so far this year, but the thing that encourages me about watching Ohio State is, at least offensively, they're not putting a lot on tape. They're going out and they're beating teams based on their ability and their talent, and they're running very basic schemes. So I love that approach from Chip Kelly and Ryan Day. Why put a lot on tape when you know you can thump people in September? So, yeah, I'd say Ryan Day would be on the hot seat if he doesn't beat Michigan and doesn't win the national championship.
All right, let me get to Oregon. Now in the Big Ten, their first two games were sloppy. Then they had a good game up against a familiar foe in Oregon State. A lot of hype with Lanning. I'm a big Dan Lanning fan, even though last year he lost to Kalen DeBoer twice. Is this Oregon team just going to get better as the year goes on? And this was just the first 3 weeks of the season, just some sloppy play with no preseason in college football?
I want to say the latter, because I'm still surprised at what Dylan Gabriel has been so far this year.
Yeah.
It's the thing that we're not talking enough about, is that just because it's a high-profile quarterback or high-profile transfer doesn't mean it's automatically plug and play, and this is 1,000% going to work. Caleb Williams was an anomaly, is an anomaly as an athlete. So you just don't see that very often, and especially at the quarterback position, when you go from one system to a new system, one playbook to another, that takes time to get used to. So I'm more of the opinion that it's just a matter of time for Oregon, and how convenient is it that Oregon hosts Ohio State this year? So I think that's going to be a massive game in regards to the Big Ten, and then the way everything falls within the Big Ten. Penn State, as long as they take care of business against opponents they should be right there in the mix, and they can maybe leapfrog somebody and maybe get into the Big Ten title game. Michigan and USC are still absolutely credible, but Oregon, it's theirs to lose, it feels like.
How did you process this confusing Matthew Sluka situation yesterday with UNLV?
Yeah, it's so much he said, right? Like, if there was a contract, we would have seen it by now. And the conversation that I've heard on a number of different media outlets, his brother speaking for him, an agent speaking for him, but an agent is speaking for a guy that didn't have a contract, but there was money, but it was only $3,000, but he was promised $100,000. If this was a higher profile player, this would be even bigger news than it already is. I'm very much in the camp of
But let's also be real, too.
athletes.
Sorry to cut you off, but if this is a higher profile player at a bigger program, like let's say if this was Alabama, they would have just found the way to get the kid the money so he would stay on the field, whatever he was looking for.
No, and I've heard that argument, and a lot of people have then countered with the Jaden Rashada issue at Florida. It was like, well, why didn't you just pay him? So it's still the Wild West. I do think, and I do hope we get to a point where there are contracts offered to these high school kids of, hey, you're a 2-star, here's a 1-year contract. You're a 5-star, we think the world of you, here's a 4-year contract, something like that. I think if Matthew Sluka, again, was a better player, a higher profile player, and a higher profile school, it would be a bigger issue. But there's also part of me that if Sluka was truly stiffed by UNLV, this whole NIL movement was meant to be recourse for athletes. And isn't that kind of the whole point that we're trying to get to, is some sort of regulation so that kids aren't just screwed over by these gargantuan programs that are trying to take in millions of dollars. So, but again, like I was saying, I have no idea what the truth is, because it's still just one side versus the other spouting stuff into the universe. It's bizarre.
What do you think is going to play out between Georgia and Alabama in Tuscaloosa? Who do you have winning that game?
And I was just thinking about this, and I was mentioning, this is a huge game this weekend, and Hurricane Helene has thrown such a wrench into everything that's occurring in the country. And I wish safety to everybody that's in that region of the country. I feel like we've seen more credible performances from the people that we expected to be good from Alabama than we have from Georgia. I'm still scratching my head about that Kentucky game. Yeah. It just didn't make any sense.
And they were lucky that Stoops didn't go for it. They kind of bailed him
exactly.
out.
Yeah. And there's still not really an answer in terms of the passing game in the absence of Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey. Carson Beck, for as many gifts as he has, I don't think he is this guy who's just an elite quarterback that can overcome the absence of guys who can catch and make plays after the catch. I think Georgia's struggled in pass protection. That was illuminated against Kentucky. Alabama certainly is going to get after that. Jalen Milroe is the best athlete that is going to step on the field in Tuscaloosa. I think it's going to hinge on him. It could be a Heisman caliber performance from him. I feel like we know more about what Alabama can be. However, there's this big emotional thing that there's no Nick Saban anymore. And Kirby Smart, after a near loss to Kentucky, I have a feeling in Athens, he was whipping people into shape, pun intended, just, not being
Yes.
literal about that, but like Kirby Smart being like, hey, we got to get our stuff together. We're playing Alabama. And this is as much of a statement as it is for the program as it is the X's and O's that we'll see go down on the field.
Before we let you run, tell me what you got cooking with TNA Wrestling, by the way.
We are live tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on Access TV and TNA Plus. We are on the march towards Bound for Glory. It's our biggest event of the year, Saturday, October 26th. We're going to be live on pay-per-view and TNA Plus in Detroit, Michigan. Tonight, we're going to find out the number one contender to the TNA World Champion, Nick Nemeth. If you haven't heard of Joe Hendry, go online and look for memes because he is a global phenomenon. So he's fighting TNA original Frankie Kazarian tonight to find out who challenges Nick Nemeth for the world title. So it's been a really crazy year in professional wrestling, in WWE, AEW, and then for us in TNA. And we're riding the wave. We're having a lot of fun right now, and TNA's never been hotter.